Well, it is always great to welcome our guests in the studio. And this morning, we are happy to welcome in and say good morning to Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall on KCMO, along with local mother Libby Davis. Senator Libby, thank you for both being here.
Glad to be here, Pete. Thanks for giving us a moment.
We appreciate you both coming in the studio this morning and sharing this story. So yesterday, the Cooper-Davis Act was introduced by Senator Marshall. Libby Davis here in studio lost her son Cooper to fentanyl, to an overdose. Libby, can you just first off share this story? I know it was in the news last year, of course, but remind us your story and what you've been through since the loss of your son.
Absolutely. And thanks for having us on. Last year, August 29th of 2021, my son Cooper and three of his friends on a Sunday afternoon decided to share what they thought were Percocet. They had 2 Percocet pills, and they split them amongst the 4 of them. 3 boys survived that, and Cooper did not. And so his toxicology would reveal later that there was no Percocet in his system. It was only fentanyl. And we believe, we call it a fentanyl poisoning because I don't think it's fair to refer to it as an overdose when those people that are ingesting these pills that are filled with fentanyl and they didn't know the fentanyl was in there, it's hard to call that an overdose, especially when they take half a pill.
That is an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up because they are taking something that they don't know what they're taking. And you're taking half a pill with the idea being, you're a kid being a kid, whatever. So I think that's a good distinction to bring up in all this. What has been your mission since that moment, since that day, and how that's tied into the bill that Senator Marshall introduced here this week?
Yeah, so immediately, my husband and I both work in the medical field. We had never heard of illicit fentanyl. We know what fentanyl is. We use it in the hospital. It's a very important and vital drug when it is produced and regulated in the United States. So we just wanted to make sure that every person we could reach was made aware of the dangers of illicit fentanyl and how it has infiltrated the drug supply in our country, and it is killing hundreds of people every day.
What, as you've learned more about this since the passing of your son, what have you realized in terms of how prevalent this illicit fentanyl is and how much it does infiltrate drugs? And we talk about, this regarding maybe other states and where it could happen more often with the drug trade, but right here in Johnson County and in the Kansas City area.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It has made it into every state in our country. The DEA, they seized enough fentanyl in 2021 to kill every American, and they estimate that's only 20% of what's coming across the border. So that means there's 80% still circulating. And I think those numbers are just growing. We know they're growing in 2021 or 22. So there's a lot of work to be done. So,
Senator Marshall, how did this relationship begin with you? And as obviously a doctor yourself, knowing this story and having that background, how did that tie into the importance for you to introduce this Cooper-Davis Act on the floor this week?
Yeah, Pete. So I just want to thank Libby for doing this. It takes a lot of courage to come here and do this and to honor her son with this legislation. Just a couple explanation points. This is murder. When kids, young adults, it's the number 1 killer of young adults in America right now. When they're taking pill X, and it's an Adderall, it's a Xanax tablet, it's Percocet tablet, and they're dying because it's laced with fentanyl, that's murder. And I'm calling on all the attorneys, district attorneys, county attorneys to prosecute this as some type of murder. Last year, almost every day a Kansan died from this year. The numbers are quadrupled. There's probably be 4 people die in Kansas today from fentanyl poisoning. We've lost more Americans to fentanyl poisoning in the last year than all the soldiers that died in Vietnam. 90% of it's coming across our open border. Why this continues and our president won't stop this illegal fentanyl from crossing the border, I don't know. Now, what our legislation does is like Libby said, Cooper and his friends purchased this via Snapchat. From what we know, Snapchat and TikTok are very involved in a lot of these drug purchases. So just like with human trafficking or child pornography, we're modeling the legislation that would follow those same rules, that if this illegal drug selling is going on these social media platforms, that they have to proactively work with law enforcement officers, federal officers in this case.
So the burden is on Snapchat, TikTok to basically, and that's where a lot of these younger people are spending their time now, on those social media platforms. Facebook is, I'm a millennial, but Facebook feels like it's for us old people. And I say that as an older millennial. They don't use those platforms anymore. So they're on Snapchat, they're on TikTok. This feels like a no-brainer. I know there's not much that's bipartisan these days. This is not a partisan issue, it feels like, at all, right?
No, absolutely not. We'll have Democrats sign on to this legislation very soon, and looking forward to that. Pete, I might ask Libby just to explain to us, though, a second what's going on with social media and these emojis and again, I'm over the hill here, but I know my children are on Snapchat and TikTok all the time. So what does it look like? What can a parent do?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Libby, I'd love for you to take the ball and run with that, because, all of our listeners, their kids are on these platforms, and there's probably a lot going on there that they don't know about right now.
Exactly. And I'm not going to profess to be an expert on social media either. Obviously, I wish we could have done more before we lost Cooper. But I was monitoring his social media as much as I could. The interesting thing about Snapchat is that messages disappear within 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so it provides teenagers and obviously the drug cartels a lot of privacy to make these types of transactions. And there has been an entire drug emoji code created. You can find that on the DEA's website, where they use emojis to say what they have, to say what they want, and that's how they communicate.
Wow. Did you have some knowledge on what that was all about before Cooper's death?
I did not.
Okay. And you were monitoring the Snapchat, though, as best you could, knowing that the messages disappear in 2 minutes.
Correct. And there was definitely, they also, the kids will post stories, and I had seen on some of Cooper's stories, which they last 24 hours, people who were selling drugs in our area would post photos of what they had and give live updates of how much they have left and where they can come get it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, this feels like something, Senator, that you noted that you'll have Democrats sign on. It feels like a no-brainer. I don't know what the pushback on this could possibly be. But if we get that better connection between the feds and these social media platforms, will this hopefully scare off these drug pushers from going to these platforms and hopefully save these kids' lives? What's the end game from that perspective in terms of how you see it?
Yeah, well, certainly, Pete, we're putting our finger in a very broken dike. Mm-hmm. When there's this much fentanyl flooding the country, I think last year alone there was like 7 tons of fentanyl was seized coming across the border. Like Libby talked about, probably 4 or 5 times that amount made it across undetected as well. So we're putting the finger in the dikes. We're trying to protect kids, especially young adults. Just they need to be aware that one pill can kill. In this case, in Cooper's case, 1/2 pill killed him as well. So we're trying to alert parents, but until we control that border, I'm afraid this epidemic is going to continue.
Yeah. Libby, for parents and grandparents who are listening to this, guardians who are listening to this, as someone who lost your 16-year-old son last year, what do you want to make sure they know about what's next? I mean, we've talked about it on the show, this rainbow fentanyl that's coming into the equation as well to specifically target teenage kids like your son.
Yes, that is a very scary thing, especially as Halloween approaches. The cartels have kind of thrown out the concept of making it look exactly like a prescription pill, and they're starting to make pills that are brightly colored, and they're calling them rainbow fentanyl. And it reminds me a lot of the vape companies who added really fruity flavors to their vapes to try to entice our teenagers. And now we have these drugs that look like candy or look like sidewalk chalk that are made with fentanyl.
What do you think in terms of the schools and what they're doing here locally, getting so involved in this community? Do you feel like our schools here in the Kansas City area are doing a good enough job? I don't want you to necessarily feel like you have to be critical of them, but what more can they be doing on this front to protect kids right here in our region?
Well, excuse me, I do think that they are starting to come alongside this epidemic. I would like to see Narcan in every school district. Some of them have adopted having Narcan on hand at their schools just as recently as this year. But I also believe, we have to change with the times. And the times right now are screaming fentanyl. And conversations and education and curriculum around the fentanyl topic need to be in every school.
How about
Pete? If I could jump in, Pete, here. One point in the Narcan. Narcan is something we used in the delivery room. It's not scary at all. I can teach someone how to use it in 2 seconds. If you can give nose drops, you can give this Narcan. Even if the person's not breathing, you can put the Narcan in their nose, and it'll be absorbed through the mucous membranes. Libby, tell us about the DEA program and what's going on in the school, too.
Yes. So DEA has brought in a program to the Kansas City area because it was identified as a high-risk area. I believe that we are one of 13 cities across the country that has this program now called Operation Engage. And their sole mission is to engage the community and schools into awareness around the fentanyl and overdose epidemic.
Where do they find that? On the website, Libby?
Yep, they have a website. You can go to DEA, just type in your search Operation Engage, and there'll be a lot of information there.
Senator, we've obviously talked about, you've been down to the border. We know well what's going on down there. And the talking point that oftentimes comes up is, well, Kansas isn't a border state. Why are you going down? This is all about photo ops and everything else and politics and whatever. It's not. I mean, Libby mentioned this fentanyl is in every state in this country. We know it's coming China to Mexico across the border. Every state feels like it is a border state living through this right now, is it not?
Yeah, Pete, every state is a border state. Kansas is a border state. There are 3 main highway arteries that come from the border right through the heart of Kansas. And then from Kansas, those drugs or human trafficking go east and west or on further north towards Chicago where they want to go. So, yeah, every state's a border state, and that's why we took 5 sheriffs to the southern border to see, well, what does the cartel look like? How do they operate? And we did learn a lot. And that's where this dike is that's broken. And just this epidemic, again, 7 tons last year alone. That's 14,000 pounds of fentanyl, enough to kill every American multiple times.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of these numbers here that you have shared with me. And when you see things like overdose deaths from fentanyl-related substances topped all other drug-related overdose deaths in Kansas in 2021, a 54% increase in Kansas for drug overdoses during the first 6 months of 21 compared to the same period of 2020. This is something, and it's not getting better. It's continuing to go in the wrong direction here. So it seems like this bill that you have introduced, the Cooper Davis Act, is outstanding. But it still feels like we're chasing our tails here on this until we get a whole handle on what is happening at that southern border regarding this fentanyl.
Yeah, that's just it. The horse is out of the barn by the time it gets here. People need to realize that China grows this like Kansas farmers grow wheat. People in China are making these precursors. They're sending them to Mexico. Chinese chemists are working hand in glove with the cartel, shipping it across the borders to other cartel members, and then selling it to our young adults, to our children.
Libby, as somebody who works in I know, obviously the doctor here spent his whole career in the medical field, but you being in the medical field as well, someone who has used fentanyl, the differences in terms of your experiences now between the stuff you use in the medical field and this illegal stuff that's all over the streets and attacking our children. Explain that to people as well, if you could.
Sure. So, fentanyl is a pain medication. It's often used with patients who have cancer, but it's also used in the operating room. Post-surgical patients get it for their pain control. In the hospital, it is given only IV and or a patch. Fentanyl does not come in pill form. It is not prescribed as a pill that can be taken home for post-operative pain medicine. It is given solely in the hospital.
And if I could add, so in the hospital, it's a pure form. We know exactly how much we're giving.
Yes.
And by the way, the biggest side effect in the hospitals, we give too much, people stop breathing.
Yes.
And that's why doctors and nurses and anesthesia are in the room ready to control that airway if they stop breathing, and we have Narcan ready to go. So the problem out in the real world here is there's just this inconsistency. And like we talked about earlier, it's poisoning. We don't know that. We didn't even know there was fentanyl in this Adderall tablet.
I think about how this evolution has happened in terms of kids experimenting. Kids are always going to be kids. But now you've got this is not kids, trying weed. This is not what this is. They don't even know what they're taking and how half a pill can kill someone like your son. I mean, I just think about this as I've got 2 young children, but I think about this from, raising kids and how dangerous these times are. What do parents need to be thinking about right now, Libby?
Well, they need to be having the conversation. And, like you said, these are kids. Their brains are not fully developed, and they're going to make bad decisions. The problem is now that one bad decision on one day can cost them their lives. So the days of being able to experiment with drugs are over. And the other scary part is we know our teens are struggling with anxiety and depression, and they have turned to self-medicating. They often don't want to talk about that they're struggling. They don't want to bother their parents with going the correct route to see a doctor to get a prescription medication that could help them. They can make a couple of clicks on their smartphone where the drug dealers are living and get what they think is a prescription pill to try to help themselves. They often think they're helping themselves.
Mm-hmm. Senator, what's a timeline on the Cooper-Davis Act and when you want to see that get done, where hopefully there'll be a better communication line between the DEA and Snapchat and Instagram?
So we think it's feasible to get it done during the lame duck session, which what I'm talking about is after November. After the election in November, I think that it's very feasible we can get it across the finish line. We'll need someone over on the House side to carry it as well, but it's very feasible. Something like this, like you mentioned earlier, bipartisan. Dianne Feinstein is working very hard. A very liberal senator from California is working with the social media companies to try to get their support for this legislation as well. So we see a path to victory.
Well, we are so grateful for Senator Marshall and Libby Davis coming in, sharing this story, and joining us here on KCMO. Thank you so much to both of you.
Thanks for sharing the story, Pete.
Thank you,
thank
Libby.
You.
You bet.